Welcome to the program, everyone. My name is Brian Craig. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast, where MAGA comes to talk. Welcome, everyone. And we got what we've been waiting for. We got our first bust of one of the deep state coup conspirators against our favorite president, our greatest president, the most awesomest president ever. And that, of course, is Donald John Trump, the 45th and 47th president of the United States. And John Bolton is a bad dude. And all kinds of things are now coming out. And when I was live on the air on Friday, and the breaking news came out that there had been a raid on John Bolton's home, and they were there all day. They were there for hours and hours and hours. I was so excited. And, of course, the media immediately go into this book story. And what we found out is it was more than the book. And we're going to get into all of that. I'm going to go through all the latest news on the John Bolton raid. And we're going to, of course, celebrate it. Because, you know, what's really been lost by the media is the lead of the story, the headline. And they want retribution. This is not retribution. This is justice. See, what we have found over the last just over 10 years since President Trump came down the escalator. Can you imagine? It's hard to imagine. It's been over a decade since the president came down the escalator. And that's when America changed. And what we found out, Donald Trump has done so many great things and revealed so much. But basically what we found out is we have a very corrupt government that is basically a third. This country is run like a third world banana republic. And our freedom has been really an illusion. We've been run by different agencies in the deep state. And when President Trump was running in the first campaign and he was talking about draining the swamp, I don't think he or anyone realized how deep the swamp actually is. And with this raid on John Bolton's home and office yesterday, this is the beginning of the coup conspirators and the lawfare conspirators being brought down. And John Bolton is a bad guy. There was even, let me pull up some of the audio for getting, let me see if I've got this clip. There was a clip of him. Let me pull this up. This is a crazy person, John Bolton. Now, you got to understand, John Bolton, who is a neocon Bush Republican, this is an interview of him about 3 years ago on CNN. And what he says that he did is god-awful and bad, but who brags about this on really worldwide television, because global, CNN is a global network. Listen, this is John Bolton 3 years ago bragging on CNN.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places.
Wow,
it takes a lot of work, and that's not.
Wow, hear that? He's bragging about taking part in coups around the world. Not here, of course.
Brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol.
Okay, he's talking about Trump on January 6th. So, I mean, he got a guy who's admitted to taking part in coups. I mean, who does something like that? I mean, first off, who does it? Who takes part in such a crazy thing? And then who goes on television and brags about it? He's a crazy person. Not only is he crazy, there's an incredible amount of arrogance. And I watched the footage throughout the day in front of John Bolton's house, and I saw at the late in the day when the FBI agents started leaving Bolton's house from the raid, and a lot of them were the computer geeks. You saw them walk out and they got into a minivan. So the computer geeks. So they really were going through some computers and everything else that he's got in there. So what was he doing? Well, last night, Jesse Waters on Fox News dropped something. Let me share this. This is Jesse Waters.
This might have nothing to do with classified documents or about classified intelligence that Bolton printed in his book. Trump Justice Insider Mike Davis says Democrats, rhinos, and reporters who think this raid on John Bolton is about his book will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's hearing Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I saw his house, and it looks like a very expensive house up there. So Jesse Waters' sources are telling him that John Bolton may have been selling classified information. This is high treason. And don't take any, you lefties out there, don't take any comfort in that he's not been arrested. A lot of times they let people like this stay free, one, while they're doing some more gathering of evidence and going through the computers and all that. My guess is they were already in his computers. They don't have to go to your house to get into your computers. They're the deep state, right? They can go through your computers as long as they're on and connected to the internet without you even knowing it. So my guess is they already had been in his computers, and the point of going there is to physically take possession of the hard drives and everything so that they can enter them into evidence. And for Jesse Waters to say something like that on Fox News primetime last night, that's he wouldn't say something that hardcore if he didn't have some good sourcing. And Jesse Waters is very well connected. So if John Bolton was selling classified information, that is treason. That makes him does that make him a spy? Absolutely it does. Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me that this weirdo, John Bolton, anybody that has a mustache like that's a strange dude. I mean, come on. You don't go around with a mustache like that if you're a normal person. But John Bolton, you have to be crazy to go on television and attack the president of the United States for doing what you are being accused of doing and are suspected of doing, and maybe even actually doing and more. All right, let's go back. See what else Jesse has to say. Let me rewind it a little.
Will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's hearing Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence. That wouldn't be putting America first. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley, who we just heard from, says Bolton could be looking at up to 20 years in prison. So Bolton should take his own advice and take a big, beautiful, deep breath.
I think it's important that everybody take a deep breath here. This is a very serious matter.
Yeah. So I would suspect that John Bolton is guilty as suspected, and that what Jesse Waters said is factual, because I don't believe Jesse Waters is a very well-connected person who has incredible sources. Don Jr. and Eric were at his wedding, right? So he's got very good sourcing. He wouldn't talk about selling classified information overseas if he didn't have good sourcing on that. And it's an interesting thing here about the media reaction, because I've been watching a lot of the media reaction, and I know you guys have since this happened yesterday. And the media reaction is very defensive. It's not often you see the media defend a Republican, but they're defending a Republican right now, John Bolton. And you know what? Comey's a Republican too. Got to understand, you Democrats out there, a lot of some of the worst people after President Trump and doing all these things are, in fact, Republicans. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast. My name's Brian. If you're new, make sure you follow and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. The Brian Craig Show podcast is on all podcast platforms. If you follow me on YouTube, you can catch the podcast live, because I do the podcast live on YouTube and I take live calls. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're welcome to call in. The number is pinned in the live chat. It's a toll-free number, 888-465-2631. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Mike from Louisiana.
Hey, Mike.
You know, you're right. This is treason.
Mm-hmm.
This
Indeed
guy
is
committing treason, and he's been committing treason for a long time, probably.
Oh yeah.
That book is evidence. His book is evidence.
It is, isn't it?
You know?
Absolutely.
And look here's the deal with treason. You're talking about putting him in jail. That's not the constitutional. That's not the constitutionally prescribed punishment for treason. The constitutionally prescribed punishment for treason is death.
Well, I don't know about that. With when's the last time that's happened? 20 years is a life sentence for this old timer, so he's facing a life imprisonment. All right, appreciate the call, Mike. All right. Oh, now I want to continue. I got a lot on John Bolton that I'm going to get into on the program. But yesterday, President Trump had some great moments yesterday in the Oval Office, and then he took that tour of the gift shop and everything. I want to share this. This is from the Oval Office. And JD standing next to it. Does anyone know why JD Vance and Trump were not wearing ties yesterday during this World Cup announcement? I'm not sure about that. I don't think I've ever seen JD without a tie before. But I might have missed that. So if you know why they were not wearing ties, let me know. But this is the president sitting at the Resolute desk.
African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know. And they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Okay, so Chicago's next, and then New York. And what President Trump is talking about is the federal government taking over policing. Democrats are just disgusting people, aren't they? They're just disgusting people. And these big cities, the crime in these big cities has been a big deal for as long as I can remember, right? My whole life. And we're talking about hardcore violent crime, deadly crime, sexual assaults, all the worst crimes. And they happen multiple times every day. And we've been over a week in D.C. without a murder, which they're saying is a record. I don't know how long it's been since they've gone over a week without a murder in D.C., but they are now because of the federal takeover. And what we've seen in Washington, D.C., is that the violent crimes that are going on in these cities, it can be brought under control. It just hasn't been. Now, with this idiot Bowser in D.C., who President Trump is hinting at removing and having a complete federal takeover of the government of Washington, D.C., which they should do, it is possible. The police forces in these big cities, we're talking about Chicago because President Trump said Chicago's next, and that's the perfect place. They have a massive police force with huge funding. There's no reason for people in any part of Chicago, I don't care what neighborhood they're in, to have to worry about being a victim of crime. In my neighborhood, I can walk in my neighborhood day and night. My dogs sadly have passed away, but I used to walk my dogs at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, every day of the week with fear, totally fearless, unless I'm walking over by the lake and I have to keep an eye out for the gators. But other than that, I don't have to worry about crime because I live in a safe neighborhood. And if my neighborhood's crime started going through the roof like in Chicago or how D.C. was before the Trump takeover, it would be ended right quick because my neighbors and myself wouldn't tolerate it. And what's happened in these big cities, which are primarily black in population, right? Chicago's majority black and Hispanic. It's a white minority city. The government of Chicago, like most of the other blue cities, is mostly liberal and very liberal Democrat and black. Why have they not done anything about the crime? Because what President Trump, Pam Bondi, and others have shown in D.C. is you can stop the crime. So why haven't they done it in these other cities? Do they not care? Do they not know what they're doing? Do they not care because they're black? Why? But when they go to Chicago and they take over Chicago, and we go a week and a half like we've just done without a murder, and they clean up the streets of Chicago, that's going to be a big change in this country. Because so many of the biggest problems we have can be solved in the United States, but we've been run by corrupt leaders who don't care about these problems. And the Democrat Party is an accessory to every violent crime, sexual assault, and murder in these blue cities. They're an accessory to it. Just like the Democrats are an accessory to the vehicular manslaughter here in Florida of the 3 Floridians who were killed by that truck driver who doesn't read or speak English that's in the country illegally from India. The Democrats are accessories to that manslaughter, co-conspirators, really, in all of these things. So why do you think the black liberal leadership in these blue cities, Chicago in particular, D.C., believe that blacks should suffer and live in these high crime areas? I don't have the answer for that. I mean, in D.C. with Bowser and that police chief, it's obviously there's a lot of incompetence going on because there's incompetent leadership. But when you look at someone like Rahm Emanuel, when he was mayor, he didn't do anything about it, and you can do something about it. It's almost like they don't. It's almost like they think it's politically incorrect to arrest these criminals and enforce the laws. I'm not exactly sure. And what's interesting about this crime cleanup in D.C. Do you notice there's been no resistance by the criminals in D.C. against the National Guard or the police? I was expecting some shootouts and gunfights between police and National Guard, and there have not been any. I don't even know if there has been a weapon fired by the police or the National Guard in D.C. during this cleanup. And it tells you that the presence itself on the streets is an intimidation factor. If you're going down the street and there's a large police presence and you're going to get arrested, and a military presence, National Guard's the Army. I know there's technicalities on that, but it's the Army. It seems that the worst of the worst don't do crime. Even this idiot pervert, Bill Clinton, when he was running for president the first time, he had this part of Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign platform was he wanted to put 100,000 more cops on the street. And when he became president, that didn't happen. And I remember when it came out, they were counting police dogs as cops, which I know technically they are, but that's not what he promised. They were even counting computers. They would give computers to police departments. Each computer they gave counted as a cop on the street. They didn't do it. Look at what the Democrats were doing a couple years ago, right? Defund the police. What kind of stupid thing is that? Defund the police. A large law enforcement presence. I say law enforcement because it's more than just your regular police, because in D.C. we've got federal agents, we've got the Army, and we've got local police. But a large law enforcement presence on the streets without any the only violence I've seen was that idiot that threw the Subway sandwich at the one federal agent that worked for the Justice Department. And just the presence alone has been a deterrent to crime in D.C., hasn't it? So what does that tell you? It tells you, one, it can be done. And it should be done. And don't let anybody tell you about the price. Oh, how much is it costing? Well, you put in a price on women not being raped, kids not being shot on the playgrounds. You put in a price on that? But whatever the price is, it's less than what it cost to do surgery on these people in the ER. It's less than it costs to try, convict, and incarcerate these people. Right? Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, if you'd like to call in, please do. The number is toll-free, 1-888-465-2631. It's a toll-free call no matter where you're listening. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Sometimes you're not the first choice to watch the kids, or the second, or even the third, the fourth, or the fifth. But when you're out of options, it's time to call Grampy. From author Todd Cardin comes a children's book the entire family will enjoy together. Grampy, the Rhino and the Soda. Available on Amazon. Grampy's a rule-breaking soda slurping wild card. Definitely not mom and dad's top pick for Safari Day. However, when Grampy takes Elliot and Lynn into the drive-thru zoo, things get wild in the best and burpiest way possible. It's a day filled with a fizzy mishap, a flatulent rhino, and one unexpected hero. It's a hilarious tale of chaos, redemption, and the kind of grandparent kids never forget. Order your copy right now on Amazon in Kindle or paperback. Grampy, the Rhino and the Soda, from author Tom Cardin.
You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Brian. It's Frank from West Palm. How you doing there?
All right,
Brian,
Frank.
You were absolutely correct. LaPorta Roofing was amazingly phenomenal. They just completed my roof last week, and LaPorta Roofing was superb in all ways imaginable when installing the new roof on my residence. Tom LaPorta meticulously spearheaded the entire project from inception through to the finalization of the assignment. Tom handled all the paperwork involving city permits, inspectors, and my community HOA. He was always available, ensuring me that he had my back in all phases of the project. Additionally, Tom, Scott, and Dan, and the entire crew were very well organized with the plan, consistent with all policies and procedures, and craftsmanship was exemplary in all stages of the design execution. Tom, Scott, and Dan maintained continual contact with me, the homeowner, asking if there were any questions I had or anything further I needed. LaPorta Roofing is, in every respect, a stellar, 5-star, AAA, family-owned company that is a reliable, peace-of-mind roofing organization. These guys are spot on with regards to perfection, and they demand it. I remain mesmerized upon the completion of the job. My roof is a masterpiece. And one last thing before I forget, they were the least expensive quote that I received out of 4 quotes for roofing. I thank Tom LaPorta Roofing for all that they do.
Wow, Frank. Well, thanks so much. Tom LaPorta at LaPorta Roofing. He covers both the east and west coast of Florida and everywhere in between. He works with every type of structure, residential, commercial, municipal, and he works with every type of roofing material. Also, don't forget, Tom LaPorta will never sell you a roof you do not need. If you need just a simple repair, he'll do it. He can also handle the job of any size, whether it's a single-family home or an HOA with over 200 units. Give him a call. This number rings directly to Tom LaPorta's cell phone, 954-604-4602. 954-604-4602. And online, LaPortaRoofing.com. Frank, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Brian. You have a wonderful day.
All right, we're back. I'm Brian. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Okay, so this raid on John Bolton's home and office. Remember, they went to his home and his office. And Jesse Waters was reporting on Fox News last night that he's been making a lot of money overseas, John Bolton, and he is suspected, according to Jesse Waters' sources, that he may have been selling some of this classified information. We don't know, but that's what Jesse Waters was reporting on Fox. And I saw this online today, and this was great. Andrew McCabe, if you're on hold, hang in there. We'll get to the calls in a bit. Andrew McCabe, remember him? Jerk. He's the one that Trump fired in the first term, like a couple of days before he got his full pension. And this guy is nuts. And this is a montage of him first talking about 2 things here. The raid on Mar-a-Lago first, and then what happened yesterday with Bolton. getting his home and office raided.
Can't overemphasize to you, John, how big of a deal this would have been within the Department of Justice and the FBI. This is not, a couple of agents showing up at some judge's door in the middle of the night to get an emergency warrant. This is something that would have been planned out and reevaluated and legally examined from every possible angle by the entirety of the leadership structure of both organizations. So let's remember that to get a search warrant in any case, whether it's you or I or the former president, you have to go before a federal judge and convince that judge that there is probable cause to believe both that a federal crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is contained within the space you have described in your warrant request. So we have, in this situation, a federal judge who made that determination, giving the agents authority to enter that premises and search every part of the premises that might contain the items that are specifically described in the warrant.
Okay, so that's McCabe talking about Andrew McCabe, part of the coup conspiracy. That's him talking about how difficult it is to get a warrant for the FBI to do a raid on someone's home, and all the steps and all the hoops you have to jump through and go over, and the obstacles, and it's a serious thing, and all this stuff. This is McCabe yesterday.
Specifically described in the warrant.
I have absolutely no doubt that Mr. Bolton will have very good counsel, and they will attack this in a full-throated and complete way, as they should, right? So we know that Mr. Bolton has said critical things about the president. That's not illegal. That's not a crime. That's pretty squarely within your First Amendment right in this country.
Yeah.
And in fact,
he's the lawyer.
You shouldn't be. You're not supposed to be. The Department of Justice and the FBI have all kinds of policies absolutely prohibiting investigating people for the exercise of their First Amendment rights. And so if that's what's going on here, and there's all kinds of reasons to believe that that might be the true motivation. We know that the president is embarked on a pretty extensive effort to go after his perceived enemies, to,
he said he was running on retribution. Yeah.
Running on retribution.
That's right. I am your retribution. That's what he told his supporters. So there's all kinds of reasons, I think, to look at this with a jaundiced eye and to be aware of the fact that there is more than just the probable cause articulated in this search warrant. There is this very fraught relationship between the two, and the president's history of going after people using the levers of power that he has access to, particularly the Department of Justice, to go after people he doesn't like.
Okay, so that's Andrew McCabe yesterday. So it wasn't retribution when they shot Trump, the Never-Trumpers, and they tried to do it again. It wasn't retribution when they arrested him. We now know that Barr, Trump's second attorney general, was working with Fani Willis, and it was his idea to do this RICO thing in Fulton County. The documents case, the property case that got tossed this way, all this stuff, that wasn't retribution. And I must say, this is exciting to us in the MAGA movement, because this is the beginning of the draining of the swamp. And it's not retribution, it's justice. There's been this self-appointed nobility of people that have been running the country, and they've been running it for generations, maybe forever. I was talking earlier in the week that the great Victor Davis Hanson, who's just amazing. Victor Davis Hanson, I believe, is the most brilliant conservative mind in America today, really the world today. And when he speaks, I listen, and he makes so much. It's like having Aristotle and Plato, people like that, alive now in real time, hearing what they're sharing. Victor Davis, you guys like Victor Davis Hanson? Oh my goodness, is he not brilliant? And he has such interesting takes. I watch his commentary that he posts on YouTube. I see him on shows and everything, but when you see him interviewed on shows, I see he's on Megyn Kelly the other day, and he's very good, but you really don't get to hear his really great analysis and take on things unless you watch his his video commentary that he puts on YouTube. I forget who he's with. What outlet is he with? If anybody knows, let me know. But just look up Victor Davis Hanson on YouTube. And he was talking early this week. He was describing President Trump as a counter-revolutionary figure. And he said this is the biggest counter-revolutionary moment in America since FDR's first election. And let me explain what he meant by that. And this is so important. You know, all this liberal crap that we're dealing with today began with FDR. All right, that led to everything in the Great Society in the '60s and everything. It began with FDR, and Herbert Hoover he wasn't a billionaire because they didn't have them yet, but he was the equivalent of a billionaire in today's dollars. And he was a very smart businessman and Republican. And the country was very Republican, not just because of the Democrat insurrection of the Civil War, but people trusted business people. You know, we had these great, this whole new era of millionaires, many of them self-made, who would be billionaires today with adjusted for inflation. And the Great Depression happened, and FDR led this counter-revolutionary movement because the country didn't trust business people anymore and the millionaire class, okay? And it led to all this liberal crap that we are facing all the time. Black Lives Matter, Planned Parenthood, all of it stems from FDR. Well, what Victor Davis Hanson was talking about is what a counter-revolutionary figure President Trump is in the MAGA movement. I've been calling President Trump for quite some time a civil rights leader. And the MAGA movement is the biggest, greatest civil rights movement this country has ever seen. And I, you guys hear me all the time. I've got incredible respect for the great Martin Luther King, the freedom riders, everything else. I mean, John Lewis, who was a freedom rider, joined Dr. King when he was 16. And he was a liberal Democrat jerk, right, that had been corrupted by their liberalism. But I shook his hand. And I shook his hand, and I said, I'm proud to meet you, proud to shake your hand, because this is a hand that Martin Luther King himself shook, and I was so I got a lot of respect for that. But what makes President Trump a bigger civil rights leader than even Martin Luther King is that he's leading all of the American people to freedom, not just a certain demographic, right? Not to take away, because I agree with what Martin Luther King did and his whole movement. The way he did it was brilliant and should be honored and studied and everything, but President Trump is leading all of the American people to freedom from the tyranny of the deep state and the permanent Washington class that are this self-appointed nobility, the Harvard and Yaleys, the Bilderbergs, the whole crowd, the neocons, all these people, the skull and bones people, you know who I'm talking about, that have really been running the country probably since its beginnings. And when Victor Davis Hanson says that President Trump is a counter-revolutionary, these polls that came out this week that show that, if you're on hold, hang in there. I got a lot to get off my chest. I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't even get out the number. But if you want to hold on, you can. If you want to call in, you can. But I got a lot to cover today. A lot I want to get off my chest. But when the great Victor Davis Hanson was calling President Trump a counter-revolutionary, and you guys should go and watch that video and listen to his commentary. What he was talking about was a lot of things, but part of it was this leading the American people to freedom from this tyrannical government that encompasses all these things that I listed, that's really been running the government, that we've had this illusion of freedom. And we are a country of the people, by the people, for the first time in any of our lives. And I don't know how much that's appreciated, but I think it is, because, all these numbers that have come out this week, CNN was reporting on how many Democrats have left the Democrat Party and become Republican. Over 40 million. They're getting destroyed because people are waking up and realizing what's been going on in this country. Here's President Trump talking about Mayor Bass in L.A. And Newsom.
Talk about the economic impact that people will have in these cities, and what's your message to the mayors to get their cities prepared, not only the beautification.
By the way, before I get to this, I don't believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump are on rough ground. There's a lot of people that think that, and I can understand why you think that. But Brian Glenn is Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. Everybody knows this. And President Trump always calls on him. And when you see them together at the White House when it's a little more relaxed, Brian Glenn is a personal friend of President Trump's. You can tell. So would he go to him and be friends with this guy so closely if he and Marjorie Taylor Greene were not getting along? I don't think so. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Can you talk about the economic impact that FIFA will have in these cities, and what's your message to the mayors to get their cities prepared, not only the beautification process, but also the safety aspect?
Well, Los Angeles is an example. You know, it's poorly run. We have a mayor there that can't even get permits to the people that lost their houses. Lee Zeldin got every permit. The hardest permit is the federal permit. Within 20 days, every single permit was there for the people to build their houses. But people are writing us and they're saying they won't give us. The mayor is incompetent. The governor's incompetent. You know, Gavin. I know Gavin very well. He's an incompetent guy with a good line of bullshit, and he doesn't get the job done. And frankly, those people want to build their houses. It's terrible. They could have been built. Some of them could have been built already. But think of it: the federal government that has the most complex part, and it's the most complex environmental thing to do. We got it. Everybody had it within 30 days. And they're not even close to getting their permits. And now they're talking about taking some of those sites and building low-income housing on them. These are high-end neighborhoods. And I'm all for low-income housing. I built a lot of low-income housing. I know all about 236. I know every program that there is in the government. I used every one of them. I know more about low-income housing than probably almost anybody. And it's great. It's fine. It's wonderful. But you don't build it in Pacific Palisades. You don't build it there, and you don't build it in the other areas that burn down. So they're talking about putting up low-income housing. And you talk about riots. They're going to have riots if that happens because you're taking the people's property away.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, President Trump, he's very kind to Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass. He calls them incompetent. They're corrupt. They're crooks. They're criminals. This is a land grab. This is a land grab. And they did this in Malibu. And they did it in Hawaii. It's a land grab. And a lot of these people, like Steve Guttenberg, the actor who was affected by this, a lot of these celebrities they're not working anymore. And they bought these mansions when they were A-list celebrities and they're paid for, and maybe they don't work that much now, but they had their beautiful home and they could, you know, have that, right? And they can't afford to rebuild or even buy another home like that. And so I know that the president knows it's corruption, not incompetence. He's being kind because he's a nice guy. But where in this country can you go that's run by Democrats, that's being run well, that's safe, and that's competent? Where? Where? You know where? Nowhere. That's right. All right, we'll take a quick break. I'm Brian. You're listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast on all podcast platforms. Just search for The Brian Craig Show podcast. We'll be right back.
Some legends are too powerful to stay buried, and some adventures are too thrilling to resist. From author Kara Saul comes a book packed with suspense, danger, and heart. New adventure of Kara Wind, Commando Avalanche Crystal Cave, available on Amazon. Kara Wind is fearless, determined, and she's ready to chase one last adventure before graduation. Guided by whispers of a lost fortune and a cave shrouded in mystery, Kara's journey will test her courage, challenge her friendships, and unlock secrets hidden deep within the mountains. But the truth won't come easily. Along the way, she meets unexpected allies and faces dangerous questions. Who can she trust? What will they discover? And will the legendary cave reveal its secrets? Find out when you read New Adventure of Kara Wind from author Kara Saul. Available right now on Amazon.
On the line, we have Bruce. Bruce is a client of Jupiter Joe Thomas. He heard me talking with Joe Thomas about annuities and what a great deal they are, and he went in with his wife, and now he's a client. Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Brian.
So tell me about your experience with Jupiter Joe Thomas.
A fine gentleman. We sat down with Joe, and we explained everything to him, and we brought all our information, and he worked everything out great.
The cool thing about annuities is your money's never at risk,
You're guaranteed a revenue stream for the rest of your life, but there's a bonus, really a signing bonus, where you can make a boatload of money before you even leave Joe Thomas's office. Can you talk a little bit about that, Bruce?
Well, that's where I was surprised when we sat down. We talked about the bonuses, and to my amazement, it was 10%, and there was even another one that's bigger.
Wow, that's amazing. So you made 10% on your money before you even got back in your car.
Yeah, it was more than that, but it was great.
Listen, guys, do what Bruce did. Give Jupiter Joe Thomas a call. You can set up a free consultation either on the phone or in the office, and Joe Thomas will put together a custom proposal just for you. His number is 561-743-0999. 561-743-0999, and online at jupiterjoe.com. All right, Bruce, thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Brian.
From author Jane P. Carter comes a genre-blending sci-fi thriller filled with noir mystery, cosmic warnings, and a beat that pulses with danger. Round Midnight. In Round Midnight, Jenny Rand woke from a coma with powers she can't explain and memories she can no longer trust. In a world slipping deeper into chaos, she's pulled into a shadow war where reality is fractured, time is running out, and cats seem to know more than they should. Guided by strange visions and haunted by forces she can't see, Jenny must unravel a global conspiracy that stretches beyond dimensions before the clock strikes midnight. If you like your fiction thought-provoking, immersive, and just a little strange, this is your next must-read book. Order your copy of Round Midnight right now on Amazon. The audiobook is available on Google Play, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and Storytel. The truth is waiting. The clock is ticking. Will you follow the rhythm before time runs out? Order your copy today. Round Midnight from author Jane P. Carter.
All right, welcome back. I'm Brian. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast on all podcast platforms. And if you are 65 years of age or older, call Chapter. Have them review your Medicare policy. You know, millions of seniors are not getting the Medicare benefits they're entitled to. You may be one of them. And the average Chapter client saves $1,100 a year on their Medicare. Give Chapter a call. It is completely free. There's no charge, no money. It's not going to cost you anything. By the way, there's no strings or anything. I'm sending my own mother to Chapter to take care of her Medicare. And they cover all 50 states. So no matter what state you watch me or listen to me in, they can help you. The number's in the description of the episode on whatever platform you are listening on. It's 805-754-3033. 805-754-3033. All right, so let's get back to it. You know, Ron DeSantis I get angry at Ron DeSantis because he is like the perfect MAGA governor. He's my governor. I'm in Florida, and the things he's doing are like perfection. But he betrayed Donald Trump. And he betrayed us when he ran against him. And I believe that he was part of a plan, because you got to understand, Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida for 2 terms and has a lot of juice with the Florida Republican Party. More so, he's kind of behind the scenes guy, Jeb. But Jeb Bush is a very powerful person in Florida Republican politics. Just, you know, I know the president lives here and we're a MAGA state, but what I'm talking about is the Republican party machine in Florida. Jeb Bush has so much control over it. And before he was governor, he was a powerful person in the Republican Party. And I believe that that the DeSantis people, which was Jeb and the Bush Republicans, that they had a plan to nominate Nikki Haley as president and have Ron DeSantis as her running mate. And I believe that by everything we saw. And I think most MAGA people agree with that. And something else I'm going to share about it. But yeah, that was their plan. You know, DeSantis first just pissed me off
when the first arrest of Trump came, when President Trump had to fly to New York and surrender himself, I was at Mar-a-Lago that day. I made a YouTube video about it. And DeSantis wasn't there. He wasn't there. Marjorie Taylor Greene was. You know, if Marjorie Taylor Greene or Kari Lake were the governor of Florida, they would have been at the gates of Mar-a-Lago waiting for that, wouldn't they? Yeah, exactly. And I knew then he was a jerk, Ron DeSantis, and it got worse. And what the Bush Republican plans were for Nikki Haley and DeSantis were this in the beginning. They believed that, those of us that are MAGA, okay, they don't understand us. They think they do, and they have this negative stereotype. Remember when Obama was president and he said Republicans are clinching their Bibles and their guns? Remember that? That's how they think of us. So these Bush Republican neocons, they got around with their Democrat friends, because we know Barr was working with the Democrats, right? Fannie and Fulton County. And they said, they call us MAGA crazies. These MAGA crazies, yeah, they love Trump, but they support the police and they support law and order. If we get him arrested, they'll drop him. And if you notice, every scheme they pulled against Trump, they always thought we would turn against him. Stormy Daniels, for example, that crap they made up. The Access Hollywood tape crap that they took out of context, all that stuff. They thought we would, everything they do, they think, And then when they arrested him in New York with that and it didn't work, and they did it again at the federal courthouse, then they said, well, you know what? There's no mugshot. So it's not real to them. If we get a mugshot of Donald Trump, then these MAGA crazy. Then they did Fulton County, and President Trump gave the coolest mugshot ever. And that didn't work. And when all those things didn't work, they shot him in Butler. And, the Never-Trumpers shot President Trump in Butler. And because there was an intervention by Jesus himself, the PowerPoint presentation screen was on the opposite side of the stage that it normally is on. So President Trump turned his head to the stage left instead of stage right. And, when he went to that graph, it was about immigration during his term as compared to the other presidents. You know that, famous woman. That was the cue for the shooter to shoot. And when it went to it, he shot. That's it. And their plan was not for that day to turn out the way it did. But what they were, at the point of Butler, President Trump, we had not had the Republican convention yet, and President Trump had not named J.D. Vance yet as his running mate. So if things would have went the way the Never-Trumpers planned, and thank the Lord above it didn't in Butler, I believe what their plan was this. Go to the Republican convention, nominate Nikki Haley, because Nikki Haley was, even though very far behind, in second place in the delegate count in the primaries. Nominate Nikki Haley with Ron DeSantis as her running mate, who was in third place. And at that point, they wouldn't care if Nikki Haley or Kamala won. That was their plan. And that's why, as great of a governor as DeSantis is, I get pissed every time I hear and see him. He's probably going to end up being our senator. At least that's what he's planning on, I believe. So you may have heard an Obama federal judge ordered Alligator Alcatraz to be closed over some BS. And by the way, if you're on hold, hang in there. You can hang in there. I don't know if I'm going to get to the calls or not. You can call. I'm not sure because I've got more I want to cover. This Obama federal judge ordered Alligator Alcatraz closed over some environmental crap. Now, have you seen my video, my trip to Alligator Alcatraz? If not, go and watch it. It's on my YouTube channel. Just search Brian Craig, Alligator Alcatraz. It'll come up. I've lived in Florida my whole life. Alligator Alcatraz is the most remote location I've ever been to in Florida by this definition. I don't think you could be as far away from civilization anywhere else in Florida as you are there. It's the Florida Everglades. It is federally protected parkland, but it's not like Yosemite or something. It's a swamp of garbage and crap, okay? It's just, and it really should be developed. Most all of us in Florida live in the Florida Everglades. It's been reclaimed anyway. And I know some people say it's a river and technically it is and all that. I get it, but it's a swamp of garbage, okay? Now, there is a lot of oil out there, and there are some oil wells out in Collier County from the 1920s, and the Everglades is filled with oil. We really should be drilling for oil out there. But the environmental impact, give me a break. What a BS thing. So anyway, they got 60 days to close down Alligator Alcatraz, according to this Obama judge, which is going to be appealed and not hold up. But this is Ron DeSantis yesterday, surrounded by Florida Highway troopers, talking about the judges ordering the closure of Alligator Alcatraz here in Florida.
Taney Processing Center down in South Florida at Alligator Alcatraz. I just wanted to just say this was not something that was unexpected. This is a judge that was not going to give us a fair shake. This was preordained. Very much an activist judge that is trying to do policy from the bench. This is not going to deter us. We're going to continue working on the deportations, advancing that mission. We knew that this would be something that would likely happen, and we will respond accordingly. That have already been ordered to be removed by the current system, and yet the previous administration didn't want to do anything about it. We're now in this position where we're leading the state efforts to help the Trump administration actually enforce the law and actually remove these illegal aliens from not just Florida, but from our country. And that's something that we didn't have for 4 years, and now that's something that we're absolutely on board with making sure happens going forward. And so we're not going to be deterred. We're totally in the right on this. But I would also note, because of the success of Alligator Alcatraz, there's demand for more. So I did announce that we are going to be opening another facility right outside of Jacksonville in Baker County, and we've called that the Deportation Depot. And so that is something that will be able to hold another 2,000. There's an airport close by, and so you have the processing.
Okay, so we're getting a second Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. So DeSantis is doubling down. We're going to get another facility. Jacksonville is right along the Georgia border, and it's kind of panhandle. It's not in the panhandle, but it's equal to the panhandle. And, we've got a big illegal problem in Florida. Even though this is a red state, there's a lot of big Democrat communities, and there's a lot of agriculture in Florida, and that brings in illegals. And I've talked many times. When I was a kid, a cousin of mine, a friend of theirs, was murdered by illegals, and it's a big problem. We've had so many sanctuary cities in this country, and when I hear DeSantis standing up to do what's right time and time again, and doing the right, like this thing he's talking about, eliminating property taxes in the state of Florida, I'm so excited about that. Homeowners insurance in Florida has gone up so much. I mean, it used to be pretty steady, just very low. And then after we had that hurricane that hit the Gulf of America coast a couple years back, the insurance rates on property insurance have gone to astronomical levels in the state of Florida. And it's gone up so much. I'm not going to tell you what it was last time it went up, but it went up again this year. I didn't even open up the envelope. I don't want to know. I gave it to my wife. I said, please do not tell me. It just ticks me off. And it's a lot of money. And a lot of people, like my mother, is in her 70s and she's retired and her home is paid for. And so she has no mortgage. And my mother, she lives in a house that was built in the 1950s in Fort Lauderdale. So she doesn't have one of those HOA fees. She has no HOA fee. But her homeowner's insurance is so high, it's a lot. And every once in a while, my mom will call and say, well, I don't know, I'm thinking about letting it go. And I was like, Mom, don't do that. If you have a hurricane, she says, Brian, it's so much. This is what my mom told me the other day. She said, Brian, this home was built in the 50s. It's been through, 100 hurricanes. She said, if it took the entire roof and blew out all the windows, it would be cheaper for me to pay to replace all of that than it would be to pay for this
insurance premium on the house every year. It's gone up. And there's a lot of, and it's a big problem. So Governor DeSantis wants to eliminate property taxes to help us out with this huge expense we're having on the homeowners insurance in Florida. You know, he does so many great things, but he screwed us over and lied to the president. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name's Chris from Kentucky.
All right, Chris, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to know how you feel about Ghislaine Maxwell getting the free plane ride and the club fed and the work release and all that.
You mean Con Air from one prison to another? I don't care.
I mean, it was one day.
I don't care.
I mean,
how do you feel? I mean, since you brought that up, let me ask you this, Kentucky. Excuse me. Let me ask you this. Sorry to interrupt your prepared telemarketer speech. How do you feel about Ghislaine Maxwell clearing Trump again in the in her statements that were released yesterday?
How do you feel about her?
No, that's not an answer. You don't answer a question with a question. All right, take care. Oh, what a jerk. Oh, my goodness. You know, let me ask you guys this. Why do I hear from so many young men that are obsessed over Epstein? Why do you think that is? I'm curious. Let me know what you think. We'll be right back.
Have you ever tried to walk in someone else's shoes? Author Ellie Gregg did. Literally. At the foot of New Zealand's Franz Josef Glacier, Ellie slipped on a pair of borrowed boots and stepped into the unfinished journey of a young man named Keller. Don't forget your travel guide, Part 1, Bootstrapping, available on Amazon, isn't just a travel memoir. It's a soulful collection of over 100 one-page reflections, blending poetry, philosophy, questions, and quest, all designed to inspire you to see the world and yourself differently. As author Ellie Gregg walks through grief and across continents, Keller becomes more than a memory. He becomes a guide, and with every step, the author invites you to pause, reflect, and embrace the grace even in the coldest places. This book is not about destinations, it's about transformation. If you're searching for meaning, healing, or just a new perspective, this is the journey you've been searching for. Order your copy of Don't Forget Your Travel Guide Part 1, Bootstrapping, from author Ellie Gregg, on Amazon and Kindle and paperback, because sometimes the best way forward is to walk in someone else's shoes. Order your copy right now. Hey, let me ask you something. What do you do when the system runs out of answers? When the doctors say there's nothing more we can do, but deep down you feel like the story isn't over? What if illness isn't the end of your story, but the beginning of a deeper one? Out of the Fire, from author Mark Dixon, is a powerful true story of a woman's resilience, reflection, and awakening after 20 years of MS. It's not about quick fixes. It's about what happens when you finally start listening to your body. If you've ever felt dismissed or overlooked, this book is for you. Get Out of the Fire, available now on Amazon.
All right, we're back, and my name is Brian Craig. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast, available on all podcast platforms. And, you know, if you want to relive the entire Trump presidency, you can listen to my podcast. You know, it's just, I've got a lot of episodes, been on the air a long time, and you can follow President Trump from the moment he came down the escalator to today, just by binge listening years and years ago. I want to ask you this question, though. Are you in pain? Why? Go see Dr. Appleton and take advantage of his laser away pain treatment. His laser away pain treatment is amazing. I got a call on the morning show yesterday from a listener. He had neck pain, terrible neck pain. He went to see Dr. Appleton. He has neck pain no more. He's rid me of pain 7 times. His laser away pain treatment works. There's no drugs, no medications, no shots, no surgery. It's 100% painless. You don't even feel the treatment being done. There's no downtime. Dr. Appleton performs all the treatments himself, not an assistant, and it works. Right? I mean, I've had these injuries and arthritis and things from aging, and I'm pain-free now. I don't even take an aspirin. I don't need to. First time he rid me of pain was just over 3 years ago, and the pain, it has not returned.
Also, no appointments are necessary. Walk-ins are welcome with Dr. Appleton, even on Saturdays. Now, if you're traveling from out of town or out of state, which many of you do, you can make an appointment. Just because appointments are not necessary does not mean you cannot make them. If you're coming from out of town, you might want to make one. And you can make one if you're in town too, but you don't have to. Walk-ins are welcome even on Saturdays. 954-973-0710. 954-973-0710. That's 954-973-0710. And online, AppletonCairo.com. All right, so let's get back to it. So John Bolton, they raided his house and his office yesterday. And let me recap what I played at the top, and then I'll share the next clip. This was amazing. Jesse Waters dropped some big news last night on his program on Fox. This is Jesse Waters last night on the raid of John Bolton's home and office.
This might have nothing to do with classified documents or about classified intelligence that Bolton printed in his book. Trump Justice Insider Mike Davis says Democrats, rhinos, and reporters who think this raid on John Bolton is about his book will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's hearing Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence.
Whoa. That makes him a spy, right? May have been trafficking in intelligence. That is Jesse Waters talking. More than just about the book. If you're on hold, hang in there. This is Turley on Fox yesterday. Isn't that so? Yeah. Would you be surprised at all if he had a nice house, didn't he? You know, I wonder how these people make a living out there. I imagine classified secrets, you get paid a lot for that, but it's high-risk crime. But, you know, this inner circle is so arrogant, and they feel so invincible. In fact, John Bolton is probably so arrogant with his deep state connections and part of the Washington class that he probably figures he's got nothing to worry about here. Doesn't sound that way to me. Here's Turley on Fox yesterday.
It is intriguing here because these are long-standing allegations that the book indicated or referenced classified material that he may have acquired when he was in the administration. We're not clear as to what that is, but it would suggest that it could be national defense information. The reason that's important is that creates a heightened potential penalty. So you can have penalties that range from 5 to 20 years. 20 years tends to be the sentences for concealing information, obstructing justice. Simply having classified information can weigh in at about 10 years. And there are often multiple counts because each of those documents can be charged separately. So there is a strange history here. So you had these allegations coming out as early as the first Trump administration. Then there was an allegation that the Biden administration essentially scuttled a further look at this case. Right. And now we have this new development. But we really don't know if there's something that has occurred most recently, whether they uncovered something that they believed is sort of evergreen, that this is still a viable criminal case. Wow. And it sounds like, you know, when this raid first happened on John Bolton yesterday, okay, they were talking about the book. And now you notice we're getting into somewhere else, selling secrets. And yesterday, Dana Bash had the vice president on, and isn't he great? He gives great answers.
You know, a lot of people have already looked at this and said, this looks a lot like retribution.
I'm sorry, this is the NBC News girl. What's her name? Kristen, is this Kristen Welker? Is this her name? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting my liberal girls mixed up.
You know, a lot of people have already looked at this and said, this looks a lot like retribution. Is this retribution?
Well, who has said it looks a lot like retribution,
exactly.
Kristen? A lot of people who tried to throw Donald Trump in prison for completely fake charges that were later thrown out by multiple different courts. I suspect that if the media and the American people let this case actually unfold, if they let the investigation unfold as it's currently doing, they're going to find out that what we're doing is being very deliberate and being very driven by the national interest and by the law here, and that's as it should be.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from all of this, from Jesse Waters, from Turley, and all the rest, to me, it sounds like there's some ongoing crime here. This is not about some old thing in a book. Now, if you'd like to support my content, become a Patreon supporter. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you become a Patreon supporter, you get access to commercial-free editions of each and every podcast episode, including this one. You know, when the podcast is over, I live stream on YouTube. I edit out the commercials and upload the commercial-free edition to Patreon supporters. So all Patreon supporters, all paid Patreon supporters get access to that, as well as a lot of other exclusive things that both my wife Kathy and I post to my Patreon page that we post nowhere else. And if you're a top Patreon supporter, you get a live on-air thank you shout-out on each and every episode, and on my YouTube live stream, you get your name up on the screen as well. So the names you will hear now are my top Patreon supporters. I want to thank SFjr, Christine, ETW, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Doris, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, Tina, David, Laura, Rob, Wes, Sue, and Janice. These are my top Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. And again, the link to my Patreon page is in the description of the episode. Or you can go to the direct website, which is patreon.com/Real Brian Craig Show. Patreon.com/Real Brian Craig Show. And when you do that, you're supporting all of my content, of which I bring quite a bit to you, I believe. This both, my podcast, my YouTube channel, everything. You're supporting when you become a Patreon supporter. Well, listen, everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Make sure you follow and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to me on. Those of you on hold, I apologize for not getting to the calls. Maybe next time. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.